It's a Wild Wednesday on the Fan. It's presented by Jim Beam, the official bourbon of the Minnesota Wild, and we've got your tickets to see them in action right now. Be caller, let's go 7 in honor of Brock Faber killing it at the Four Nations Face-Off for Team USA. Caller number 7, when a pair of tickets see your Wild take on the Boston Bruins March 2nd, 1-800-320-5326, 1-800-320-5326. Good luck, and it's a Wild Wednesday.
Second hour in the mix, it's Nordo in for PA. PA on an exotic island for at least the next 36 hours or so, and then he's going to return for a Friday feast before next week he embarks on a journey to the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. My guest in studio now, thank you, Standard Heating and Air, Ben Goessling via the Star Tribune, at Ben Goessling via X. You just returned from an exotic island.
I did.
How was that stark contrast of environments for you when you touched down on the plane from somewhere sunny and beautiful?
Yeah, it was. I was texting with a couple people from back home when we were in Puerto Rico for like 4 days, and there was like a 115 degree swing between the worst of the wind chill here and the kind of the, you're probably high 80s, touching 90 on the feels like temp down there. And then, it's one of those where you're like, I don't want to pack the coat because I'm not going to need it there. But then when you get off the plane, it's like, okay, let's just, bite the lower lip and get through it. Because even that getting onto the jet bridge thing off the plane was like, this is a shock. And then running to the car, like you just go as quick as you can. So, yeah, it was great to be out of here. It was great to be in the warm weather. But the return is, you know what you're returning to, and it's not necessarily terribly easy to come back to it. Not that anybody feels bad for me, nor should they, but yeah, it was a bit of a shock last night.
I've tried to explain it. Like, I think in some ways, if we just all knew it was going to be 15 below for multiple weeks, I think we could acclimate. Yeah. I mean, that's not necessarily going to improve our bitterness, right?
No,
like, we're still going to be somewhat annoyed by it. But when you think, like you mentioned that temperature spectrum there from where you were to when you came home, it's going to be like 40 degrees. So, and it's not quite that same stretch, but we're going to have a 60-degree difference in like 2 days. I think in some ways that's worse than even the temperature itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the shock of it is a lot to deal with. And I think there is and I've learned this from, obviously, you and I have both lived here most of our lives, and you learn that there's a difference between 10 and negative 10. And I think the year of the polar vortex, I remember thinking, it's going to be, because that was that stretch where it was like a week and a half or maybe even longer than that, where it didn't get above 7 or 8 degrees. And I remember thinking, okay, if it's going to be 10, I can deal with that more so than I can with negative 10. And it's cold. They're both cold, but even that's a 20-degree difference. It's like, okay, and I'm the psycho that says, well, what can I go outside and run in? And I definitely remember that year, like, I can work with 10. I can work with negative 10. I don't want to. 10, I can deal with it. It'll be fine. So, yeah, there is a little bit of that thing where just what you acclimate to and what you describe as normal, then when it drops from that, the shock is a lot to deal with.
So let me ask you this. This is radio. Most people can't see me, but you can look at me and go, he's not a runner. But you are.
Yeah.
What is the coldest you've run in?
I remember it was actually the day before the Minneapolis Miracle. So my birthday is in the middle of January. I went out with a friend for a run on my birthday. We ran like 8 miles. It was going to be really cold that morning. I think neither of us had looked at the forecast enough to know how bad it was going to be. I think the air temp was 11 or 12 below, and the wind chill was probably, the wind wasn't terrible, but the wind was probably still 20 something below or something like that. And you have to have the right stuff. I mean, my high school cross country coach was a big, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing guy.
Yeah.
So if you have the right stuff, and the right stuff gets expensive with all the Gore-Tex, you can do it. But I was double gloves that day, double layers of socks, face mask, the whole thing. And I remember my friend showing up to my house, and he said, what my wife said to me this morning when we left the house, or when I left the house to come meet you? She just goes, you guys are idiots. And I said, dude, she's not wrong. But it was fun. But, those are those are ones where I've had high school kids say, hey, can I run on this stuff? Like,
Right.
You can if you have the right stuff. If you don't, I wouldn't try it because it gets pretty nasty.
So yeah, the Gore-Tex, and because you got to deal, I mean, outside it's obvious. You got to battle that.
Yep.
But then you're sweating and it's cold.
Yep.
So you probably, by the time you were done, you got like frozen.
Oh, those
sweat.
are fun.
Oh, absolutely. Right.
Yeah, that's the badge of honor of the whole thing. When you have the ice shield on the eyebrows, and I can't grow a beard like to save my life. So
I can't. My nickname is Patches.
Well, that's how at least you try it. I'm patchy, and there's more salt to go with the pepper than I would like there to be. So I just don't try. But people that have the beards and those get all icy, those look really cool. So I just get the eyebrow kind of ice thing. But the people that get the full ice beard, it's my hat is off to them, so to speak, because it's definitely a bigger effect when you can do that.
So last thing on this, and then we'll jump into football, of course. If it does eclipse 40 degrees on Saturday or Sunday, you got to wear shorts.
I have.
That's shorts weather.
Yeah, I think when I was training last year for Boston, there were some 40-degree days. We're like, yeah, I'll be fine. If you get warmed up and you get going, it'll be fine. So yeah, if it's 40, I may be out there in shorts.
Okay, there we go.
And the nice thing is that for anybody that may see me, if you're annoyed that I went to Puerto Rico, you at least have the benefit of if you see me out running, I won't be quite as pasty as I otherwise would have. So I did this for you folks who may see me out running. So you can send your thank yous to me on Twitter. Yep. Not quite as much white on the lightning, but it'll be a little better than it otherwise would have been.
The most prescient Vikings news before we kind of start looking 10,000-foot view is we've seen both the contracts of Aaron Jones and Byron Murphy. Their void dates extended to just before free agency starts.
Right.
So what does that mean? I know now neither of them can be franchise tagged.
Yep.
That might be a bigger talker with Byron Murphy Jr. at this stage.
Yes.
But what are your thoughts when you see that pop and kind of the path forward with those two guys?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, I think, certainly with Byron Murphy, because he's going to be in line to get a big payday. I mean, you're talking probably $20 million a year or somewhere in that neighborhood, 17, 18 million. I mean, that's top flight corner money. And he had the kind of year heading into free agency. Yeah, 6 picks, makes a Pro Bowl. Showed he could stay healthy. I think the Vikings actually had offered him a deal before last season, kind of trying to get ahead of it. He turned it down. And, betting on himself, he won the bet. So there is going to be a major deal to do with him. And I think the fact that they said, let's extend that negotiating window probably means I think they want to sign him.
Yeah.
I don't think they would have done this if they didn't, but you have to give something in return for that. He knows this is his chance to get a payday. So I think the concession is we won't do the franchise tag because if we're going to keep you here, we want to do it on a long-term deal anyway. So it's a little bit of a show of how they feel about him, but it does put them in a situation where if they're going to bring him back here, it's going to have to be a long-term deal that's probably pretty expensive. His deal now expires the day before the league year starts. And I had somebody ask me this yesterday. It does mean that negotiating window can open and he can talk to other teams before that void money would hit the cap. So they could do that. I'm sure they would prefer to have him signed before he gets the chance to talk to anybody else. We'll see how he wants to play it. It's worth noting, I think, his agent is Daniil Hunter's agent as well. And the Vikings have done quite a bit of business with him. And sometimes that had gotten a little bit contentious over the years. So how this one will go with Byron Murphy's agent and the Vikings is, I think, worth watching as well. But yeah, I think they want to get something done with him. And the fact that they didn't have the franchise tag available, it's a recourse they could have taken. But I think it makes sense if they're going to do it to be on a long-term deal anyway.
Yeah, and I was going down a little bit different road with it mentally because I was thinking if they want the flexibility or even just a bit more time to negotiate a long-term deal that is both amenable to what the team wants and, of course, get him paid, that they would have used that tool to kind of lock him in.
You could do that. At
least extend the conversation. Right. But yeah, that's so if Byron Murphy is a priority, is it too early for me to make the leap that it says Cam Bynum, I mean, the ability to sign both of them kind of puts that in doubt. So if you're If you're high on Byron Murphy Jr., Cam Bynum, it looks like, is probably going to find himself a nice payday elsewhere.
Yeah, I would think it makes it a little more difficult to do it. I think if you are not signing Sam Darnold, then it becomes a little easier to do it all. But do they want to pay Cam Bynum when they have Josh Metellus? I think Theo Jackson is somebody they will see as a bigger piece going forward. That's not a position that you spend a ton of money on typically, and Metellus is actually going to be in line for a new deal here as well. I mean, he has outplayed the one that he's in. Some of these incentives he's hit, teams do not write incentives with the idea that you're going to get $2.5 million of those things if you're a guy at Josh Metellus' level. He has 100% outplayed that contract, and I think he will be in line for an extension too. So then the question becomes, if you're going to sign him, because he's more of that chess piece in Brian Flores' defense, and you like Theo Jackson, do you pay Cam Bynum, knowing that that position is probably one that's a little easier to replace on the open market, affordably, or in the draft, depending on where you draft and develop somebody? I think that's going to be a question, and it also will depend on what Cam Bynum's market looks like. He has had times where he gets beat in coverage. He has had times where he misses tackles, but he's certainly shown he stays on the field. I mean, he's played a lot of snaps over the last few years. I think had 1 year where he maybe either didn't miss one or only missed one or two the whole season. And he's shown he's got a nose for the ball. I mean, the reason we know about all of the dances is because he's been involved in a lot of turnovers. So I do wonder if they will say, between the penchant for the ball and his voice in that locker room, especially if Harrison Smith is not there, do you try to make it a priority to bring him back? But you are going to run into this thing where if it's Murphy, if it's probably needing another corner somewhere, it's, I think they'd want a defensive tackle. The guard position on offense is certainly going to be a priority. There's only so many things you can do, even with all of the money that they have, because some of these things get really expensive. So I would say, yes, Murphy is probably a bigger priority than Bynum in my mind. And if they sign Murphy and do some of the other things they may want to do, signing Bynum, unless the market is one that works for both sides, may be a little tougher to make that happen.
Yeah, and I do, because you did a good piece. I assume you wrote it. You didn't write this from Puerto Rico.
No, that was filed before I went.
Yeah, it was on the 15th, I think.
Yep.
And you did a good job kind of speaking to some levers that can be pulled. They have about $60 million in cap space, but that could be more, as a matter of fact. And so I do want to get into those names. You mentioned Harrison Smith, though. And he's actually part of this conversation, too. I do wonder if the team already knows which way he's leaning, or if they don't, that's got to happen pretty soon, right?
It does, yeah, because the deal with him is that on the third day of the league year, which what is the third day of the league year? The exact date, I think if he's on the roster by the end of March 13th, which is actually the second day of the league year, but if he's on the roster carrying into that third day, he would have a 2026 base salary that is already guaranteed in 2025.
Oh.
And that base salary is, I believe, $25 million or 25.5. In other words, it's not a real number. It's not a number they're going to pay. So this is there as a trigger to say either we're making a decision, which probably means him retiring, or we are restructuring this thing to rip it up and do a new deal, but that has to happen relatively soon.
Yeah.
Which means he has to have made a decision. I mean, I suppose they could always cut him and then bring him back later, kind of on the Antoine Winfield thing that they tried to do that didn't work out, but I don't think they're going to do that with a guy that's played here for 13 years. No. I mean, Harrison Smith is at a bare minimum, Ring of Honor. Yep. I mean, that's not a question. Hall of Fame is going to be the other piece of it, and it may be interesting to see how long it takes him to get in. I don't know if that'll happen right away, but
no, I think I've always warmed to the idea when you look at the stats, but I've also always played into the Earl Thomases of the world. Yeah. You think about some of the safeties that were getting the All-Pro nods over Harrison those years, and not that's not the popularity contest that a Pro Bowl invite is. But in some ways, the spotlight was never on 22 the way that maybe most of us locally thought it should be.
Yep.
He kind of feels like a Jared Allen to me, where he is going to wait 4, 5, 6 years, and ultimately he's going to be enshrined.
Yeah.
And so, and that's also why, we've talked about it the last few years, not with serious, digging into it, but the idea that he would ever go play somewhere else. I've never seen that with Harrison, right?
No.
So it's here or nowhere. it kind of feels like. And if we are going to lose Bynum, I mean, I like Theo Jackson. I know the team likes him, although once the game started counting, he couldn't make the field because Bynum and Harrison wouldn't leave the field.
Right.
But if it is going to be Theo in the mix and another year in Metellus, I kind of want Hitman back for another year.
Yeah.
Give me like an actual swan song season that says 2025, this is it. This is my last ride. I want that for Harrison a bit.
Yeah, the thing with him is
I don't think he wants it.
I don't think he cares about it enough to give everybody this is my last time through, because I
agree.
I don't think he wants the attention. I think he would be annoyed by it, frankly. And he also is enough of a dance to the beat of his own drummer guy that he likes this idea of, I mean, he said this to us in the locker room before of like, I'm gonna decide to retire. I'm not gonna tell you guys. Like, you'll figure it out. I mean, there's a little bit of that where he's gonna do what he wants to do and doesn't really. He either enjoys the fact that people are guessing, or at a bare minimum does not care that he's making people guess. So I think he's going to think it through. I'm sure he has already. He was banged up at the end of the season. He's got 2 young kids now, so this may be it for him. I would not be surprised if it is, which will be a bittersweet one for me because he's the last guy in that locker room that I've covered. I mean, his first year was my rookie year on the beat. So that'll be a weird one for me if he's gone. But I think he will have to make this decision here fairly soon. I do think there's value in having another guy that's an accomplished deep safety, because that's probably not where you want Metellus to be in the long term. You want him to play that role that he's played. But is that still Harrison Smith? Is that Cam Bynum? Is that Theo Jackson? Or probably some combination of those with another piece in there maybe in the long term? I think there's a reason football-wise that you'd want him, but do you want him to be the only option at this point when he's 36 years old, doesn't run quite the way he did? I think all of those things are going to come into the equation. I wouldn't be surprised if this is it for him, but if he's back, I certainly see there being a role if they can kind of figure that out. So we'll see how that one goes in the next couple of weeks here.
The situation with Sam, and this has been a talker, the tag and trade, and I've been pretty consistent. I just think threading that needle is a little difficult for the Vikings from a tag and trade standpoint. So, I mean, it just kind of feels like that we're landing on him, and the coach has kind of alluded to the idea of Sam earning the right to be a free agent, those sorts of, that kind of tells the story right there, right? I mean, we're going to see him open in free agency and likely find his way elsewhere.
I think so. I mean, it tells the same story that the coach was telling with Kirk Cousins last year. I mean, that language, he's earned the right to be a free agent, is the language that Kevin O'Connell used with Kirk Cousins last year. It's kind of this, okay, go see how the market feels about you, and then, you know, the way the Vikings have typically done this, at least the way they did it with Cousins, is they'd say, we want you, but it's at this number. And I'm kind of making a plane with my hand here for those who aren't able to see it, which is everybody but you. So it's one of those things where I think they're going to say, we like you at this point, and we want to work with you, but that's kind of going to be where it is. I don't think they'll get into a bidding war. Right. I think they'll kind of have a principle of, okay, this is the top of the number that we're going to go to, and this is going to be our offer. And if you find something better than that or something that works better for you, we'll wish you the best of luck. And
I just think that might be an insulting number. I mean, I think they have to
I don't think it's going to be a market value number.
Right. I think they have to be realistic about it, of course, in Sam's camp, but that's what I envision is if that's the process that takes place, and it makes sense. I mean, if you can get Sam back for money that works, I can understand why the team would do that. But it is going to be insulting in contrast to what a free agent quarterback needy team is going to offer him.
Yes, it is. And the quarterback market continues to get more expensive. I mean, you have Jordan Love making $50 million plus now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that contract is starting to look a little, it's not wearing well.
Everybody calm down.
It's awful.
RELAX from the producer's booth. Is that where we're going?
Little sophomore injury slump. Nothing to worry about.
Okay.
It's not his sophomore season because he's been in the league for several years.
Starting.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Asterisk.
But quarterbacks like that who have to get disclaimers issued from the producer's booth are making $50 million something a year now. So is Sam Darnold going to get anything approaching that from the Vikings? I don't think so.
Probably not.
Because it just doesn't make sense for where they're at. Now, if they were to tag him, that dead money, that $5 million that now would hit the cap because of his void years, also goes on there with the tag. So you're now talking a cap number.
So you still get the dead money?
I think so.
Wow.
Well, you'd probably be able to spread one. No, you can't, because his deal is voided. That goes on. Anything that would be in a new deal would be in addition to the dead money. So you're talking now a cap number of 46, I think. So that just feels really hard to do to me. And if they were going to play ball with him on a long-term deal, I think they would have tried to move that date as well.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you could tag and trade, but I agree that's a risky line to walk unless you have it already lined up that you think there's something there that you can make happen before you go do the tag. I think that's going to be interesting to see what you find out about that, what we find out about it at the Combine next week. But yeah, that number feels a little tougher to do, and it feels a little more to me like it's heading towards J.J. McCarthy and some other veteran, whether that's Daniel Jones or somebody else. I think that's probably looking a little more likely at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. You are, and the Combine is next week.
It is.
And the rat race begins, right?
Yep. I was, PA and I were texting because he was asking about Combine radio last week, and we were comparing pictures of our respective shorelines, his in the Pacific and mine on the Atlantic. So, a little bit of flexing there. But yes, Combine is, I think that the coach and the GM talked from the Combine on Tuesday. So it's here.
Yep.
The offseason is here.
You're going to be there 9 to noon. PA is going to be there Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll be doing shows there, and excited to do it. Let's pause, and then I do want to get into some of those lever polls that you put. It's a great article, StarTribune.com. Ben kind of put it together as we're trying to figure out, okay, $60 million now. What can change? I got a couple of texts, actually. They're asking, TJ Hawkinson, what about it? Metellus, you mentioned, that's an extension candidate. Van Ginkel, I know he's 30, but my goodness, final year of deal. There are things that can be done, and Ben's gone already far down the road of putting some of those ideas in our heads. We're going to talk about that more next. Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, brought to you weekly by Standard Heating and Air. More Vikings football around the corner on the Fan.
Country sensation Hardy is bringing the Jim Bob World Tour to Somerset Amphitheater. Catch him when he takes the stage August 16th with special guests Co Wetzel, Stephen Wilson Jr., and Sicarius. Enter for your shot to win a pair of tickets or on our contest page, KFAN.com, keyword contest center.
That's Brett Blakemore producing 9 to noon. I'm Eric Nordquist, Nordo in for PA, and Ben Goessling, thanks to Standard Heating and Air, is in studio. He covers the Vikings for the Star Tribune, and I saw this it's several days ago now, but it's very, very much in play for the conversation with the purple into the Combine, out of the Combine. Rumor mill here, clues, and who's hanging out with who in Indianapolis and all of that. There are, with the $60 million in cap space. Wow, by the way. First of all, just for a second.
It's a different world.
We joke on a yearly basis, like which couch inside the Vikings facility that will be searching for nickels and dimes to sign a fourth-rate guard of some sort.
Right.
Or a special teams demon. Not that they aren't important. But $60 million in cap space, measured spending spree last year can become explosion in 2025.
Yeah.
And the team with 24 to 26-ish free agents, they're going to need to replace, whether they're returning bodies or new faces, they need to make some moves. With that said, there are levers that can be pulled, and you broke it down in that piece for the Strib, in terms of potentially getting even more cash and creating more flexibility for Kwesi. I want to start here because several people, Bradshaw and Bryant, KFAN text line, the inbox, 64686, several people have asked on this guy, and this is Chris from South Carolina. Crazy question, maybe. I'm curious, Ben's thinking on trading TJ Hawkinson. He's an offensive piece, I know, but he's getting $17 million this year. Maybe get a second now. He's kind of floating. Could we get a second? Could we get a third? Tight end draft very deep. Thanks for the text, Chris. Now I wasn't going down the trading route. I am going down that number is huge.
Yeah, it is.
And it needs to change. And I wonder if that's on the to-do list for Kwesi.
I think it could be, and I talked about this a little bit in the piece. It's an interesting idea on the trade, Chris, because you're right. He is a piece that people may be attracted to. It is a deep tight end draft, which could allow you to replace him. The problem with that is that you can kind of cut that both ways. If somebody says, hey, it's a deep tight end draft, why would I give up money for a guy that is making that kind of money? He's not on a rookie deal anymore. He's had an ACL. I mean, if you're thinking about it from another GM's perspective, that would be part of it too. I don't know that the Vikings are interested in moving on from Hawkinson. I don't think they are, but I do think that number is something that could get addressed. In fact, when they did the extension for Hawkinson before 23, they put a void year on the back end of that at the time.
They did.
It was kind of interesting to see that was in there. And I remember texting a couple people, and I basically said, is that there as a placeholder for a future restructure? And they said, yeah, basically that's why it's in the contract.
And it's commonplace now. It's getting there. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it is. And I think these numbers keep going up. And I think somebody threw this out. Maybe Florio threw this out yesterday about the possibility of Netflix trying to get one of those Sunday afternoon packages in the next TV deal. If that happens, the numbers continue to go up and up and up in terms of
Netflix.
Money. I don't either, because it wasn't great last year. I mean, the Tyson Jake Paul, I guess they got it fixed by the Christmas Day game.
No, the Christmas Day games actually were pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought the presentation was fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm just tired of all the streaming services.
Yeah.
I can't help it. Okay. I'm not made of money. I'm not broke, but I'm not rich either.
Yep.
And the money that I do have, I actually try to be, fairly scrutinizing in terms of how I spend it. I don't want Netflix. Just keep it on cable, please. Yeah.
Or the free TV. I mean, there is still that nice thing of Fox and CBS are still free.
Okay.
To the average TV viewer. So there's all of that stuff. But I say that to say that if Netflix is even involved as a possible threat, because the NFL always wants to have a team or a network that doesn't have it to kind of up the bidding. If they are in the mix, that means the bidding is going to continue to go up, which means the cap continues to go up, which means that if you have void years in contracts, what you are basically doing is saying we can shove some money into some future year when the cap's going to go up so much anyway that if we're borrowing from tomorrow to cover today, it's never a bad reason to do it.
Right.
So that's why they put some of these void years in these contracts right up front now, and that's why they did it with Hawkinson. So what they could end up doing is you convert part of his base salary to a signing bonus. He gets cash up front, and then you stick that whatever number you decide on to do, you spread that over to the rest of his contract, and then you have that void year as another year in that deal. So it allows you to lower that cap number this year. I think that's very possible that they will find some way to do that with him.
Man, now you got me thinking, and I don't want to go too far. Like Bezos is going to be in the mix too. He's going to be like, hey, I'm spending, Netflix is in on Sundays. Well, I just dropped $3, $4, $5 billion on the Thursday night bid. And that's, cute little Thursday night games.
I want the better ones. I want Sunday afternoon.
I want Sunday afternoons. And my platform is more consistent for live streaming
it is.
than Netflix is. Oh, that's okay. They're just absolutely printing money.
Well, the commissioner has talked about a goal being annual revenue of 20 whatever billion. Yeah. I mean, the best way to get there is to continue to crank the TV prices up. So I don't think that's going to stop.
And how far can you stretch the customer?
Yeah,
that's the question. And they've proven that as of yet they have not stretched the customer too far.
They do not seem terribly concerned with the idea that they're hitting that point anytime soon.
What do we do with Andrew Van Ginkel and Josh Metellus, respectively? Nice, really, really nice, team friendly, but a good bump for Metellus a couple of years ago. But now, of course, not just outperforming that, but in a stage maybe where he's earned maybe a 2 or a 3 year piece on this. But then Andrew Van Ginkel, a little bit older, with the type of year that he had, that feels almost like the proactive approach before agent starts having big spot conversations to make sure that if we want Van Ginkel around long term, we can. And I think, 12 or 15 on the cap this year, something like that with Van Ginkel. I'd love to knock that number down, too. Maybe lock these guys up and extension candidates at the least, right?
Yeah, I think so. And Van Ginkel has void years on the back, too. So if you do an extension, those void years turn into real years, which means you can stuff some of the signing bonus in those years that are already there. So there is a way to do it with him. He's 30. He had the foot injury last offseason. He was coming off of foot surgery, did not stop him from spending his entire summer helping neighbors in Rock Valley, Iowa, recover from floods. Yeah, he's...
And you went down there, right?
I did. Yeah, I went down there in September to see a lot of the damage and talking to people. They said, he was just out here every day helping people. He cleaned his basement and helped everybody else because it's just kind of, this is what you do. he didn't. And
That's his community.
That was kind of how he talked about it too. It was just, this is how you go about it down here. So he was coming off of that, and I think is relatively healthy. He had a few nicks and things throughout the season, as everybody does, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see with him. He would seem like an extension candidate. Brian Flores loves him, not just as a pass rusher, but what he means in terms of the way he talks about him, the way he diagnoses things on offense, can make adjustments. He is a central piece to all of the things they do under Brian Flores, and was a big reason why Brian Flores wanted him here. He actually wanted to sign him the first year that he was in Minnesota as well. So you add all that, you add the fact that it's local for Van Ginkel, you get the Van Club or whatever they call it coming up from Rock Valley for a lot of the home games. They do the caravan thing up here. It makes a lot of sense for him to still be here. You got to figure out what that number looks like, but especially with Dallas Turner kind of waiting in the wings here too.
Yeah,
but I would think that there's probably
Patrick Jones potentially going away. That changes the face of bits too.
You're right. So I think there is probably an extension to do there with him. It's probably not a mind blowing number, but he probably gets a bump.
Ain't 5 and 100 or something like that.
No, I don't think it's that. It's probably 2 or 3 years, and then Metellus may be the same kind of thing. So both those guys get rewarded for the work they've done.
That's cool.
And then you find a way to play with the cap numbers there.
A couple of quick potential cut related conversations, and then we'll put a wrap on this. Final year, this is my framework on it. Is Garrett Bradbury has 1 year left at $6 million? I think he's here and starts and plays at that number. Ed Ingram, depending upon free agency and a focal point in the draft, Ed Ingram kind of strikes me as a potential cut guy, which maybe saves you $3.5, almost $4 million, somewhere in that area. What do you think about those two guys?
I think I agree with you on both. I think Bradbury, we know the issues with Bradbury. Bigger defensive tackles give him trouble, but especially if it's a rookie quarterback or a new starter, Garrett Bradbury is an asset in terms of helping, say it's J.J. McCarthy, Garrett Bradbury helping him understand how to manage protections and how to change those things at the line of scrimmage, I think is valuable. And they like Michael Juergens a lot. I think they feel like he's a future starter in the NFL, but giving him another year to work behind Bradbury and giving McCarthy the veteran center year one, it's not a huge number. So, yes, I think that's more likely than not that he's back as the center on that contract for 2025. Ed Ingram, the other thing to remember with him is he's hit enough of these playing time incentives through his first 3 years that his number is actually going to be like, I have it in the story. I think his cap number.
Oh, that's right. It's over 5.
It's like 5.2 million.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine he's back at that number. And none of it is guaranteed at this point. So when he lost his job last year, it's,
that may have told the story.
I think it does, because Kwesi,
I think Brandel goes back to swing backup guy, best case scenario.
Yep, I think that's right. Kwesi has shown he's not afraid to move on from the mistakes. They had high hopes for him. It hasn't worked out. So I cannot imagine he's back at that number. I think that's a likely cut, more so than Bradbury, if I had to gauge it.
I'm excited to follow you in Indianapolis. So all the pressers and bits, you kind of dig into who the Vikings are going to be interviewing. Do you catch any of the workouts at all? It's a busy week for you.
Yeah, it is. It'll be a little shorter stay for me than normal. I'm doing 2 days down there. I think we have a team of 3 going down there. Andrew Kramer is going, and then Emily Leiker, our newest beat writer, she's doing her first combine. So part of my time down there will be to help her kind of get acclimated and get connected to people. She's done a great job for us. So I'm kind of looking forward to helping people get to know her and get a little more familiar with her work. But so I'll be down there Tuesday, Wednesday, and I leave Thursday. So I'm not there for as many of the workouts. Okay. But as the combine, I've got a story in my Access Vikings newsletter later this week about this too, kind of what really goes on at the combine.
Yeah.
The important stuff at the combine is not the stuff you see on TV.
It's not on the field.
No, it's not.
Yep.
So it's kind of this baseball winter meetings dynamic, and that stuff happens throughout the week, but the time that I will be there it's more important for that than it is to see the workouts. So yeah, it'll be fun. It's always a busy week, but yeah, there's plenty going on. The Vikings have a general manager that needs a contract extension too. We didn't even get into that, but
no, we didn't.
There's a lot going on.
In the wind.
Yeah, it's still that's still an open question. They're still talking about it. They're still, I think, interested in doing it, but as of yet, it is not done. and the combine is next week.
It is.
So lots to be discussed.
Welcome back. I'm sorry that the weather wasn't to your liking. The 100-degree difference is insane, but you will be wearing shorts when you go on your run this weekend, so that's pretty sweet. And keep up the great work, man. Appreciate you spending time with me.
Thanks. It's been fun, and I'm glad to be back. Glad to be back at it.
Ben Goessling, thanks to Standard Heating and Air at Ben Goessling via X. News is next. Stump the Snob at 11 a.m. Don't leave.
Wild Wednesday is sponsored by Jim Beam, the official bourbon of the Minnesota Wild, are here all season long. Listen every Wednesday through March for your chance to win tickets. Already gave away the pair for this show today, specifically Ron and Hudson, your big winner. It's all brought to you by Jim Beam, the official bourbon of the Minnesota Wild. It's a Wild Wednesday.
Welcome back. It is News to Nord. It's brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com. Feeling the felt all year long. What a place to be when it's this cold outside, by the way. Have some sips at Chips. If Derek Allen is working, it is a Wednesday. Tip him mightily. And have fun and patiently await live racing in the spring when we all thaw out. Where are we headed to first? News do Nizzle.
Number 1.
We're heading to Boston because there's a lot of updates since we've last talked hockey with Fallness via Michael Russo. So here's the latest.
Is it over?
Well, it could be over. I'm going to refresh on the off chance that something else happened. Okay, it did. So, from Michael Russo, who's covering Team USA, news bit number 1, this 45 minutes ago, both Matthew Tkachuk and Austin Matthews are on the ice for Team USA.
Really?
It's a good sign for them going forward. They'll probably play.
Here we go.
Here's the bad news. Brady Tkachuk not practicing.
Yeah.
So there's the good news and the bad news. Here's kind of good news, though, or I'd say good news. This is from Russo 27 minutes ago. Team USA general manager and ours, Bill Guerin, tells me they're still working through the Quinn Hughes situation and are still trying to bring him to Boston.
Sanderson.
He'll skate with the Canucks today in Vancouver.
I forget even who texted it in, but I love the idea. Sanderson, take one for the team here.
Yep.
Stomach ache, stub your toe, whatever it is, paper cut. Paper cuts can be
bilateral leg weakness.
More painful than you think, and we need to get Quinn Hughes in the mix. Good to hear Tkachuk's back on the ice, the elder, but Brady still experiencing some ailment. Let's go. I'm so pumped for this, and we're going to have Russo on again tomorrow. But the idea that the team's trending towards health, we just want, whatever this thing looks like tomorrow. We want our guys. We want our guys on the ice tomorrow night. That's going to be so much fun in Boston. Looking forward to it.
Can't wait.
Number 2.
For those who missed it, the guy who was just in here and he's lurking around in the hallway somewhere, Ben Goessling, tweeted this out earlier this morning.
Ben's not a lurker.
Well, he's around.
No, he's
not going to hang out.
No, I'm not saying you said anything wrong or offensive, but Ben is about business. He goes to and fro. He doesn't get distracted. He's a man with his eyes on the prize.
Yep. Maybe he ran out of the building. That was terrible. The Vikings, he tweeted this out this morning. Yeah, I know. He tweeted out this morning, the Vikings have 3 2025 road opponents that are playing international games. That is the Chargers in Brazil. That's the Browns in London. And the Steelers in Dublin. Given the fact that they just went to London last season, the Vikings might not be on the NFL's international slate, but it's logistically possible for them to play overseas this year. What would be your power rankings of places to go? And why is the last one Brazil against the Chargers?
Well, it'd be Dublin, Brazil, and then London, only because we've seen London several times. We have a good record.
We don't want to go back to the stadium.
We do have a good record in London, actually. So maybe that should be first. I'm just thinking selfishly, personally, I've been to London, and London's cool. There's no doubt about it. But in terms of, I failed myself a couple of years ago when the Vikings went. I didn't get outside of London. And at the time, as a matter of fact, there was a train strike. And so
there always is.
You couldn't, in this particular case, I couldn't take a train out to Manchester or anything like that. I couldn't do those things, or Liverpool, etc. So I was kind of disappointed. And other than that, London, for the most part, in the depths of it, feels kind of a lot like any other big city that you're going to go to. Pubs were super cool, restaurants. I don't think the food in London is particularly spectacular. But London itself was cool. I need to be out and see like a castle. I need to see some old stuff. And I didn't get the chance to do that. So I'm not writing London off. Just a mediocre experience there. Dublin would be unbelievable. And Brazil would be interesting. And I would like to go to Brazil. So that is all to say, by the way, that I have no idea if any of us would be traveling along the way we did a couple of years ago. This last time it was get in, get out. It was all about business. And so none of us went. And that's probably the way this would take place again. I really have no opinions in terms of ranking them or needing to. I know that, this is taking away one of the Vikings' 9 road games. And Kegs and Eggs, one of our, I know, listeners from a streaming standpoint, and a lot of people listen to the Vikings on the radio, of course. That's not going to change. But the numbers when we did the London game with the Jets were freaking astronomical. Getting out of bed, having a little breakfast, getting everybody ready to enjoy the day, and you can cross a Vikings win in London off your books by lunchtime. Yes! That's awesome. So that would be, the question in terms of where to go would be more, I guess, Brazil. What is that? I think it's in Sao Paulo. So, man, I want to go to Brazil. I want to see Brazil. I want to see the beaches, eat the food, enjoy the culture. And so learn how to speak Portuguese, or at least use the AI translator on my phone and maybe pick up a handful of words along the way. That'd be kind of fun. The only thing I'm curious about, though, is how they choose them. So it's not that. So the NFL has kind of parsed out the international areas. They've almost like put up regions of sorts. And the Vikings, I think the UK is a Vikings region. So promotionally, their merchandising, all of those things, the Vikings kind of hold the rights in that area. Does that impact the choice in terms of who's playing where and when? And I assume if the Chargers are going to Brazil, that South America and that region, maybe they're that's their area. So would they choose the Vikings to go there? Would they choose the Vikings to go to Dublin? They just played in London a year ago. Would they double up on teams other than the Jacksonville Jaguars? If somebody knows more than me and they could say, hey, Nordo, this team's played in London 2 of the last 3 years. Well, there you go. That would actually include the Vikings, by the way, the Jets, and then the Saints 3 years ago. But I don't know how they delegate that. I don't care where they go. I just care that they get the W and come back safely.
Just real quick, from a purely football, not vacation standpoint, just playing the game, if I'm a Vikings fan, I would be furious at almost like it just the field in Brazil for the Green Bay Philly game was atrocious. It's famous that the field, the NFL field at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, got that in, is horrendous. And then I don't know what the situation with Dublin is, probably a rugby pitch. I don't like that either. I would not want to be involved, and I don't want to be involved going forward. The trip's great from a fan perspective, but as far as playing the game, getting out there healthy, I wouldn't like it.
Man, I had so much fun with the Rubes in 2022 when we went for the Saints game. It was so awesome. I mean, there were like 100 or so KFAN listeners that were all in the mix, all there, staying at the same hotel. Like, it was just an absolute blast. I love that. I just, the field conditions, Lewis Seen tearing up his leg on the turf at Tottenham. It's selfish of me to look at it this way. You know, which of those matchups in a foreign neutral surface, which I'm not ready to go down that road yet. I like us against any of those teams. I like us being competitive in those games. I would probably go Dublin, Brazil, and then London if we are ranking. Let's do this. We're going to pause, and then when we come back, we're going to play some sports trivia. Stump the Snob. Started during COVID, then it went away. Maybe it's back. We'll see. We're going to try it at least once when we return. Final hour, you'll get to meet the participants. It's Nordo in for PA 9 to noon.